we're going to continue working on volume. And so yesterday we talked about what a volume is, and we measured it by unit cubes. Today we're also going to talk about other things that volume is usually measured in. All right, so we're going to use unit cubes to do our counting, right? But we'll also be using cubic centimeters, cubic inches, and cubic feet. So before we continue, let's go ahead and define what these are. So what is a cubic centimeter? Basically, this is the volume of a cube with the side length of 1 centimeter. All right, and it's really important that we pay attention to units that it's being measured in. And so when you see centimeters, our answer for our volume would be in cubic centimeters. So what are cubic inches? So the cubic inch is when the volume of a cube, all right, has its sides in at least 1 inch, all right? So when we're measuring in inches. And then for cubic feet would be at least the sides would be in feet as well, all right? So this is when the volume of a cube has at least the sides would be, or the length, the width, and the height would be in feet. Now for the improvised units, these are like non-standard units. So the centimeters, the inches, and the feet are standard units. The improvised units are not standard units, and so non-standard units used to simplify calculations. So like when you're using your hands to measure like the height of a horse or to measure something. All right, so it's not a standard unit. All right, that being said, we are going to do a quick review of what we worked on yesterday, and I'm going to go ahead and present my entire screen so that way we can use our Active Inspire. All right, so here a quick review of what we worked on yesterday. We talked about volume, all right, which is how much space is within a container. And another way to measure volume would be length times the width times the height. Length would be how long it is, width is how wide, and the height is how high this rectangular prism is. All right, so we talked about solid figures. So let's go ahead, as a quick review, go over measuring these objects here using our formula right here. So again, we are looking for the volume. The first thing I always do when I'm measuring or I have to measure something is I'll go ahead and write the formula and then plug in the numbers and work from there. So with the first one, notice that this is measured in feet. So my answer would be in cubic feet. All right. Another way to write cubic feet would be like that, cubic feet. All right, with my 3 like an exponent. So measurement for volume, volume equals length times width times height. So here, I've got my length right here. My length is 3, so I'm going to plug it in here. 3 times my width, how wide is 1. So 3 times 1 times, and my height is 2 times 2. Any number multiplied by 1, if you remember, identity property of multiplication is it's the number itself. So 3 times 1 is 3 times 2 would be 6. So my volume here is going to be 6, And because it's in feet, I'll bring this down here, 6 cubic feet. All right. I can write it this way, or I can write it as 6 cubic in words. All right, feet. So let's go ahead and measure our next object right here. All right, so if this is my, go ahead and circle this with one color, circle this with another color, and circle this one with a third color. All right. So again, my volume is my length times my width times my height. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in that formula right here, length times width times height, and then plug in the numbers. Okay. So for my volume, I've got a length of 10. My length is 10. Now notice that the units for this particular object, rectangular prism, is in centimeters. So my answer this time around is going to be in cubic centimeters. It's really important to pay attention to the units in which the object is being measured. So my length is 10, and my width, how wide, is 4. And then my height, how high, is 2. Okay. So my volume is the volume of this object. When I go ahead and multiply, there are several ways for me to do this. I can multiply the factors in any order. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply my 2 times 4. My 2 times 4. 2 times 4 will give me 8. And then bring down my 10. All right. And then 10 times 8 will give me 80. So my volume here will be 80 cubic. Again, I'm paying attention to the unit in which this is being measured, cubic centimeters. All right, another way to write it would be 80 cubic centimeters, like that. The last object, notice that this right here is measured in feet. I'm going to drag that over to the side to give us some space. All right, so this is measured in feet, so I have to pay attention to that. All right, so as I measure this, I'm going to go ahead and first of all write my volume. Volume equals length times width times height. Notice that no matter how much I know what volume stands for, I go ahead and write my formula first and then plug in my numbers right after. All right, so the length right here, the length of this object is 4. So got 4. The width right here is 2, how wide, and the height is 1. Okay, so my volume here, any number I multiply by 1 is itself. That's the identity property of multiplication. I know my 2 times 4 is 8 times 1 would be 8. So the answer here would be 8 cubic feet. You can write it like this, or you can write it in full. 8 cubic feet mean the same thing. All right, so our focus today, and that's a quick review from yesterday. So we're going to step it up a notch and then work on finding the volume of an object with cubic units. All right, for us to do that, we're going to also watch a video about finding the volume of objects using cubic units. Or unit cubes, excuse me. All right, pay attention as we watch.
Welcome to Math with Mr. J. In this video, we're going to be finding volume using unit cubes. And if you take a look at your screen, we have two rectangular prisms that are filled with unit cubes. So we have a great visual of what volume is. That's why I like these unit cubes, especially when someone's just starting out taking a look at volume. I also have our formulas up here that we can use for volume, and using these unit cubes will give us a better understanding of why and how those work. So let's jump right into number one here, where we have a rectangular prism filled with the unit cubes. So the first thing we need to do, there's a couple different strategies. Let's use the base times height formula first. So I'm going to write my formula. Volume equals base, the area of the base, times the height. So what this means, essentially, find how many cubes make up one layer of that rectangular prism. It doesn't matter if it's the top, bottom, either will work. So let's do the top layer. Count how many cubes are on that top layer. Hopefully, you got to the answer of 15. That's the area of the base, or area of one of the layers, is 15. Now we can find the volume, or how many unit cubes take up that shape, by multiplying one layer by how many layers there are. And there's 1, 2, 3 layers. So we could do 15 times 3, and that will give us how many unit cubes make up that rectangular prism. And 15 times 3 gives us 45. And I will put CU, which means cubic units. And that's the volume of that rectangular prism. And volume is how much space a three-dimensional object takes up. Let's use our other formula and see if we get the same answer. Volume equals length times width times height. So length, I consider how far back the three-dimensional object goes. So if we take a look here, how many cubes back? Well, 3 times the width. How wide? 5 unit cubes. And lastly, how tall the height? 3 unit cubes. And this will get to 3 times 5 is 15, times that 3 gives us 45 cubic units. So both formulas give us the same answer. And that will happen for every rectangular prism. Again, volume is how much space a three-dimensional object takes up. And we use unit cubes in order to measure that space, whether it's cubic inches, cubic feet, cubic yards, meters. Here we're just using cubic units. The unit of measure is not given. So let's take a look at number 2. So we have a rectangular prism there. We're going to find out the volume by finding how many cubic units fill that rectangular prism. So again, 2 formulas we can use. We'll go through both. Volume equals the area of the base times the height. So for this one, you find the area of one of the layers and then multiply it by how many layers there are. So let's take a look at the top layer. How many unit cubes make up that top layer? Hopefully you're thinking 8. So one layer has 8 cubes, and then multiply it by the height, or how many layers there are. 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. So 8 times 4 gives us a volume of 32 cubic units. Let's do length times width times height as well. So write out our formula, then we plug in. So how far back? What is the length? 1, 2, 3, 4. Times the width here, which is 1, 2. And the height we already determined is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we get to a volume of 4 times 2 is 8, times 4 is 32 cubic units. So using unit cubes gives us a visualization of volume and what it means to fill a rectangular prism with unit cubes. So hopefully that helped. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, peace.
All right, so we just watched that short video on measuring with unit cubes. And so we're going to go ahead and do a quick practice with that as well. I would again share my entire screen, so that way we can use the Active Inspire. So using the formula length times width times height, notice that I'm going to go ahead and plug that in here. Volume equals, I'm going to make my length blue. I'm going to make my width red. And I'll go ahead and make my height orange. All right. Length, how long, width, how wide, and then height, how high. Okay. And the volume is how much space is within that container. All right. So our volume here, again, I'm going to go ahead and plug it. And this time we're measuring in unit cubes. All right. So our measurement this time is in unit cubes. So since I have unit cubes, I'm going to go ahead and count those unit cubes. All right. So for here, my length right here is how long it is. I'm going to count using here in blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to plug in my 5 right here. And for my width, how wide? Got 1, 2, 3. I'm going to plug in my 3 right there. And for my height, how high does this go? I'm going to count from down from the bottom. 1, 2. I'm going to plug in my 2 right here. So what is my volume? My volume, I'm going to go ahead and multiply. I can multiply 5 by 3, and then 5 by 3, and then multiply by 2, or I can do it in any order, multiplying the factors in any of the orders. All right, so my 5 times 3 is actually, all right, so 5 times 3 would give me 15, and then times 2 would give me 30. I can do it the other way around and have my 3 times 2, which would give me 6. And then multiply that by 5, and that will still give me 30. Excuse me. All right, so my answer right here, my volume is 30 cubic units. And that's my volume. All right, as a class today and in Google Classroom, we've got our vocabulary to work on, as well as, where is it? Here, a number of volumes that we need to find. The first one right here is exactly what I modeled for us as a class, and we've got more to work on as well. Remember that I inserted my my formula first before solving, and I do that all the time just to make sure that I am plugging in the numbers and doing it correctly. I also make sure I look over my work when I work. All right, and so there are quite a number of cubic units for us to measure today. And so what we worked on was volume, as well as finding the volume of cubic units in math today.